Hi, I know recently I've been talking a lot on Twitter and on YouTube about this question about the type of education offered at yeshivas. First of all, everybody agrees that yeshivas deliver an education. Now, some kids might not be successful, that's their own issue, but all yeshivas deliver some form of education. The question is, how much of a secular education do they offer? Some offer more and some offer less. So then people ask me, well, why do I oppose the yeshivas offering more secular education? And my answer is I don't oppose the yeshivas offering more education. I oppose breaches in religious liberty. This is the real crux of the issue. And religious liberty, as I explain in other videos, even though it's a controversial thing, there are 100% sincere religious views of a tiny minority, not even the whole Satmar community, but certainly much of the rabbinical establishment believes this, that does indeed believe that certain aspects of secular education are problematic. I think every Orthodox Jew will agree that there are issues, for sure, to delivering to children to certain aspects of secular education. The question is how much? Where do we draw the line? And there are more cloistered or more extreme groups that set the bar, I would say, higher as far as what is prohibited, and some that are more permissive. And part of the beauty of America is that there is religious freedom, and you can have the choice of, do I do it this way? Do I do it that way? So no, I do not oppose. I would be very happy if more yeshivas offered a Regents diploma. I would be happy if, personally, I would be very happy if some of the more Hamish yeshivas even decide to open a college that operated Al Taras HaKodesh, that operated in under religious, their religious rules, just like, you have the Bible colleges that, you have some very well-established, accredited colleges. I mean, like we do have an Orthodox Jewish community. I myself went to Touro College, and even though Touro College was founded by essentially a modern Orthodox / Litvish rabbi, Dr. Bernie Lander, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who I had the schus of meeting on several occasions. It was always very special to be in his presence. I was always very impressed by him, by Dr. Lander, Rabbi Dr. Lander. But he catered to the Haredi community, including the Hasidic community. He has the Machon LaParnasa, which, is mostly, it was a partnership with the Baba Rebbe. It was mostly geared to Baba Chasidim, but really anybody in Borough Park or whatever could benefit from this. And so they had essentially the Baba division of Touro College. I mean, I'm not a Baba Chassid, but I'm a big fan of the old Baba Rav, for sure. He used to daven in our shul, but that was before my time. But that's not what I'm arguing. I would be very happy if Satmar developed a program like Baba has, but we live but what's more important than what I want is the free market system and religious liberty. Those are the foundations of America. The ideas of compulsory education are really, I'll be honest, in a certain sense un-American. There was never the push for compulsory education comes mostly from socialist ideology. I'm not saying education is a bad thing. And I'm not even saying compulsory education is necessarily a bad thing. But we should be educated about the roots. Where do these ideas come from? These are not fundamental to what it means to be an American. And the fundamentals of America are much more important than the ancillary issues. And education certainly is not a national issue. Never was supposed to be. It certainly should not be an international issue. I saw someone brought up, the UN, this and that, said it's a human right. No. this globalist agenda is totally not American. It goes against the very fiber and being of what America's all about. And so essentially, my issue is not, whether or not yeshivas choose to add more education, but whether or not they have the right to choose it. And then some people say, oh, but they're bullying, the this, that, it's a mafia, that's peer pressure, this, that. You are not under any obligation to give into peer pressure. And I've seen some people on Twitter, all right, you can complain, you want to complain that you don't like how your parents raised you, right? You don't like that your parents didn't send you to a school that offered more secular education. Okay. But now you're sending your kids, that's one thing. But then I see these people who are sending their kids to yeshiva where they don't like the secular education. And so they're saying, well, why can't Satmar give more secular education? Well, you knew what you were getting into when you sent your kids to Satmar. What do you mean when I sent my kids to Satmar? My parents are Satmar. I'm not talking me. I'm talking these people writing on Twitter. My brothers and sisters, they disown me. Well, you have to make decisions in life. Life is not always easy. You don't have, they say to me, you won't understand what kind of pressures you go to because you don't care about fitting in. You're a nonconformist. The government isn't under an obligation to make sure that you're a conformist. The government is not under an obligation to tell Satmar, you have to do this and do that. Now the government can say you have to do this or that, or else we won't give funding. However, the thing is, there are issues of fairness. Now, I would prefer, a lot of these places wouldn't receive any funding, but it has to be fair. Meaning, and I'm someone who, I send my kids to Satmar schools, and I'm very happy with the Satmar schools, and I'm very happy with the secular education my kids are receiving, and my kids, I'm sure, are going to do fine in the secular world, and if they decide to, as some of them say they plan to, if they decide they want to grow up and go to college, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure they're going to be able to have the tools that they need to succeed and meet their goals to the best of my ability, whatever I'm able to do. Just because they go to a school that doesn't offer a Regents diploma doesn't mean they can't, during the summer, study some extra time. If that's something that's important to them, it's something they're going to have to put work into. If they have a goal, that's what they're going to have to do. Not everybody has those goals, and that's fine. I mean, and like I've said many times, here I am, I'm a college graduate, my wife's a college graduate, we've been on food stamps for the past 9 years, and I know people who are millionaires who don't even have a GED, who barely speak English, who went through the Satmar system, and are very successful. I mean, it is part of the culture, and that's something that the idea is, and it's a matter of faith. We're a religious community. We're not just a community of people who just share a culture, but there are religious beliefs in this community. And many of the Haredi Gedolim, both from the Hasidic and from the non-Hasidic world, have often said that it's better to be your own boss because then, whatever blessings God wants to bestow on you will go directly to you and don't have to go through a middleman. But if you're working for someone else, you're going to have to get a middleman. People say, well, you have to live in the real world and this and that. Faith is a major part of our life. I mean, I can't deny that truth. But again, if you're upset how what schools your parents sent you to, and then you're sending your kids to that same school, there's something wrong with you. You are free 100% to get up and go to another school. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in places like Borough Park and Muncie, there are many choices. I understand Williamsburg and Kiryas Joel have less choices, but both of those places aren't that far from Muncie or Borough Park. So I know people who live in Kiryas Joel who send their kids, young kids, to Muncie to go to school. Same thing. You could live in Williamsburg and send your kids to schools in Borough Park. If you want a school that has more English, do it. I mean, and even in Williamsburg, you have, what is it called? Veen, which has a lot of interaction with Satmar, a lot of, and, I'm pretty sure in Veen they give more English than they give in Satmar. I don't know that much about it. And you're also free to open your own school. And someone says, well, someone tried to open their own school and the school failed because there's pressure and this and that, and people badmouth and this and that. Well, you have to have a certain amount of courage if this is something you want. You can't let other people bully you around. And people are like, oh, well, someone called me on the phone and threatened me and this and that. I've had people call me on the phone and threaten me too. And I called the police and I don't give a damn. You want to threaten me? You want to tell me? I mean, those people are thugs. I don't care if they speak Yiddish. I don't care if they were Streimel. That's thuggery, and they don't represent anybody, and most of these people don't actually do anything. What, you think just because somebody is going to make some kind of threats, first of all, you think they're really going to go through with it? A lot of these people have no guts, but that's beside the point. If you believe in something, you follow, you do what you want. And if that's going to cost you even your parents, your wife, your children, whatever it is, and you really believe in this, that's sad. It's not a happy thing. It's not something I would do. It's not something I would suggest to do. I was lucky that when I wanted to become religious, my parents were more or less supportive. Maybe at first my mother wasn't so supportive, but she grew into it. My father was really supportive the whole time. My father is not even Jewish. My mother, she grew up Orthodox and she left and she wasn't so happy at first, but then she realized, no, this is good. And she's very supportive now. And she was supportive pretty early on. But at first, she was a little nervous about it. She was a little upset about it. And that's natural, that's normal, and people get over it. I know people, and all right, not everybody has a perfect family life. If your parents don't accept you because you want to send your kids to a different Hasidic school that has a little bit more English, there's something wrong with your parents. I'll be honest. If your parents are that upset at you that you decide to send your kids to Bobov instead of to Satmar because you want them to have more English, now will Bobov take them in? These are questions you have to ask. Or wherever it is, Spinka, this. I know plenty of Satmar Hasidim who send to Spinka, Pupa, Krasna, whatever it is. Usually it's because they don't want the politics, or because they want maybe, first of all, in the older days, before the split, the schools weren't as high quality in the Gashmias section. I'm not talking about religious studies, and I'm not talking about secular studies. I'm just talking, how nice were the buildings and so that. The fact of the matter is, competition breeds. That's part of the free market. Many people who I know, and I send my kids to both Satmar schools. To both Rebbes, to Rebbe and to Zalman Leib. I know them both. I'm friendly with both of them. I have one daughter in Rebbe school. All my other kids are in Zalman Leib school. I don't really care one or the other. It's just that these are the closest schools to my home that would take my kids, even though there are schools closer to my house. And I can't go and complain that Vishnitz say they don't have room, and Fallsburg said they won't take me because I was a rabbi in a shul that they disagree with, and I can't complain that I don't like, even though the day school maybe would take my kids. I can't complain that that's not what I want for my kids. Now, the thing is, I do ask my kids, would you like to go somewhere else? Are you happy where you're studying? There are other options. We can find something else for you. And they're happy. They're very happy in Satmar. And I'm very happy with Satmar, and it's wonderful that the tuition is extremely low. There's so many good things about it. But not only that the tuition is low, but the services are very high. The services are wonderful. In Kiryas Joel, what my daughter is getting in Kiryas Joel, I would not get anything near to that in Monticello School District where I live. It's worth it that my daughter goes and travels an hour to school every day, because the type of care, the type of love, the type of services, both religious and secular, that she is getting there, The secular services that she gets in Curious Joel, she wouldn't get in Monticello, and Monticello has to pay for it because that's how the law works. I mean, it's state of the art, top of the line, with love, with care. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And so it hurts my feelings personally when I hear people bad-mouthing Satmar, because my experience has only been positive. My experience has been the best you could imagine. But, and that could change, this and that, but I've had very good experiences. I taught in Satmar. I was very happy teaching there. The curriculum is totally fine, totally appropriate for the kids. I mean, you can't make complaints. The parents choose to speak to their kids in Yiddish at home. So the fact that the kids start elementary school and don't learn English till they're 6 or 7 years old, the mothers could speak to their kids in English. They choose to speak to them in Yiddish. That's their culture. That's their right. I know plenty of people who do the same thing from other cultures, both Jewish and non-Jewish cultures, that they want their kids to speak several languages. They raise their kids speaking Farsi or whatever language, and it's good. Now they have an extra skill. And that's part of the reason why I was excited to send my kids to Satmar, because even though I speak a fluent Yiddish, but I'm kind of lazy, and at home I speak English, and my kids speak English, and I figured when they're still young, they can pick up languages, so at least they'll be immersed in a Yiddish environment, and they'll grow up speaking Yiddish, and they'll be good at it, and they'll grow up with an something extra that they're not going to get if I would send them to a Litvish school. So, because how much do you really get in kindergarten? And the fact of the matter is, what they are getting in Satmar, I am blown away by what a high level of religious studies they get. They don't get that in a day school where they're just learning about Hatikva and Yom Ha'atzmaut and, a few words of Ivrit. My kids are learning real serious stuff. I mean, high-level issues in halacha and hashkafa, biblical studies, and diktuk, how to read Hebrew. The difference between a mapik hey. I didn't know what a mapik hey was till I was in German, almost. Sure, or at least I was an older bacher. I was at least 18, 19, maybe 20 before I knew what was a mapik hey, how a Pasach Genuva works with a mapik hey. I always thought a Pasach Genuva was only with a ches. I didn't know, and I know what it was called. And my kids are learning that, my 6-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, they're learning aspects of diktuk that we skipped over in the schools that I went to. And even I see Rabbanim who don't even know, who say Elohai Yaakov in Hallel, and they don't know that the hey is enunciated at the end of the word, and not before the Pasach, but it's at the end, after the Pasach. And that's why I say Eloha, because it's not a word. There's no word Elohai Yaakov. And so it's not taking God's name in vain to say that, because it's not a word. And people don't even know that. And my kids are learning that in Satmar, where everyone's, they don't, they're learning it and they know it. And any kids who pays attention, and their English is really good. It's for sure what the girls are getting. I mean, my son is in, pre-1A, whatever they call it. So, and my other son in nursery and babysitting, whatever. So like, they're not, playgroup, they're not, getting their English yet, but they're going to do fine. I'm more worried about them that they should pick up the Yiddish. They should learn the Aleph Beis. They should learn Kriya. That's what I'm worried about. That's what my wife says. My wife says all the time. She's like, I don't care if my daughter, what kind of English she's going to get. I can do that with her at home. But my wife's a Giora. She says openly, she's like, I can't give her, I can barely read a sentence in Lashon HaKodesh. I cannot teach her Ivra. Now me, I could, but I don't have patience for it. If you want me to learn, you want to learn Tanakh, I love it. I'll go. You want to learn halacha, medrash, and whatever hashkafa. That I'm happy. And in English, the same thing. I don't have much patience for the utilitarian stuff like reading, math stuff. You want to talk about science and history? I love that stuff. You want to talk about social studies. You want to talk about the Constitution? I'm your man. That's the kind of stuff I enjoy. But yeah, math, it can be fun sometimes, but it's not as interesting to me. I'm just talking about me personally. But of course, you have to know math and reading and spelling and things like that. But the point, what I'm saying, is that I'm not fighting against the secular education. I'm in no way opposed. I have spoken to her, but I taught GED courses in Kiryas Joel. I'm very supportive of the Hasidic community expanding their secular knowledge, their secular studies, and I know plenty of Hasidic people, Satmar, whoever, very frum people, who are very well educated in English. The Manal in my son's school speaks better English than I do. The Manal Ruchni in Satmar, in my son's Satmar school, knows about all kinds of theories and education and things. He's a brilliant person, but also very educated both in a religious and secular way. So you can't say that these people are ignorant of the world. They are well educated. Now, did he learn this in Cheder? No, he learned it along the years. He built up. Now, is he a millionaire because he has all of these secular knowledge and he can talk about? I don't know. He said something I even never heard of, and I went to college and Bogmulian's theorem and this and that. I mean, it's the same thing. Like I said, I met a Rav who went to YU and he has a master's from YU and he didn't know what a crabapple was and he didn't know. He couldn't, he's trying to teach a chayodim and he's struggling with, how do we say a pea pod and this and that. He's like, what's the shell around the kidneys? How do we call that? What do we do? And I was just like, it's a pea pod. He's like, oh, yeah. And he has a master's degree. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying having more education doesn't mean this and that. And it's like I said other times. But the fact of the matter is, back to what I was saying, like the parents who are not happy with their kids' schools, when there are other options, when they live in Borough Park, they live in Muncie, they have other options. All right, it's not always so easy. Maybe it's not as affordable. Maybe there are other issues. Let's say they would send their kids to a Litvish school. Is it the end of the world? I mean, I know in Sullivan County, at least one person, he wears a Shtreimel Shabbos, and he sends his kids to co-ed, modern Orthodox day school. And he's very happy with it. I couldn't do it personally. It's not for me. I mean, I guess if my kids really wanted to, if that's where they want to go, I wouldn't say no. But I have my issues why. I mean, many of the Rebbeim there, I mean, he's not there anymore. This one Maggid Shir, this one Malamed there, said that they discouraged me from sending. They said, no, don't even think about that. Because I had people who were trying, because we were homeschooling for a while. It's another option. Homeschool is an option. There are many, many options, and but the fact is, if you're an adult and you're not happy with the education your kids are, no one can tell you what to do. Your parents can't tell you what to do. I mean, might it be wrong for you to do that? But these are decisions. I'm saying vis-a-vis the government. If you decided tomorrow you want to send your kids to Catholic school, to Muslim school, to public school, to wherever you want, no one could stop you. I mean, I guess, except, if it's a fight between the husband and wife. I'm saying if both parents decide together that's what they want to do, your parents can't, the grandparents of the kids can't stop you from sending your kids to public school if that's what you really want to do. Yes, the husband and wife was whoever gets, if they get divorced and whoever gets, what they call custody, and then there are legal ramifications for that, and to keep the kids the status quo and things like that. Yeah, that is true. And I think that's how it should be, but sometimes both parents decide they want to chuck the whole thing. Sometimes both parents decide we want to be frum, but we want to send our kids. We can't get our kids into school. We're going to send them to public school. It's happened. It's sad. It's wrong for the schools not to accept, for the yeshivas not to accept the kid because of this or that. But the yeshivas are private institutions. They have the right to refuse whoever they want. Just because something is right or wrong doesn't mean that we need Albany to make laws to say what's right or wrong. That's my point. Meaning, but the thing is, I personally don't think it's wrong for the yeshivas to choose a different path, for the yeshivas to choose. Yeah, boys are not going to get any English after a certain grade. That's their decision. That's the yeshiva's decision. They have a right to, and now the law, thankfully, has recognized that. But they have the right to make a decision. What am I doing? And, and they're not claiming that they're giving a Regents diploma. They're not claiming, whereas the school I went to had a Regents diploma. I've taught in different yeshivas. I've taught English in at least 5 different yeshivas. And each one was different, one that I taught in gave a Regents diploma for the boys. But in 12th grade, there was no English. So how do you give a Regents diploma if there's no 12th grade English? Because you don't need 12th grade English to have a Regents diploma. You could get it all done in 11th grade. And then 12th grade, you could be learning full time. And I myself, when my last semester in high school, I went to Yerushalayim to learn all day. Nothing wrong with that. And I got college credit for it. Everybody got to do what's right for them. And I understand not everyone's going to be a big Talmud Chacham. Not everybody's going to be a Rav. Not everyone's going to be a Dayan. There's this letter, which some people say is a forgery. The claim is that it's a letter that someone anonymously sent to Satmar Rebbe from Monroe, saying, here he's in German. He has his own business. He has Dayanis. He has Hayra. He has Dayanis. Yara Yadin Yadin. He could be a Dayan. He decided to go into business. He could have been a Dayan. He could make a parnas as a Dayan. At first, maybe not so much, but after a while, there's parnas in that. He could have gone somewhere else. He didn't have to stay, he could have been a rabbi in a shul somewhere. He could have been a chaplain. There are plenty of things he could have done. Right. He decided to go into business, worked himself up. He said he's making $80,000 a year, but after all the expenses with the family and this and that, he has nothing. He maybe has $100 to spend. But one thing, a month or something, after all his expenses, making $80,000 a year. Now, I was making the last couple of years, $20,000, $25,000 a year, and I was doing fine. The one major difference between me and him is that he said his rent is $3,000 a year for a tiny little, $3,000 a month, for a tiny little apartment. Again, I don't know if people are saying this is a forgery. It doesn't matter. So why are you living somewhere where rent is $3,000 a month? Pick up and move to Bloomingburg and you could get rent for $1,200 a month. Even in Monroe, you could get a decent sized apartment for $1,200 a month. You don't have to live in Williamsburg, all right? And you can commute. It's 100% possible to commute every day from Monroe to Williamsburg, to get on the bus and commute. It's not easy, but life isn't always easy. It's just how it is. And then he was saying, when his kids are a little older, and the time comes for chasana, he's going to have to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in a chasana. Why do you have to spend that much in a chasana? You have no obligation to spend that much in a chasana. You get a minyan together, it's just as really with 2 Adam, it's a kosher chuppah. I've been Messiah Kedusha myself at plenty of chuppahs where we didn't have a minyan. That's all right. That's a little bitty avid. Chatchil, you're supposed to have a minyan so you can say Sheva brachas. You can't say Sheva brachas without a minyan. You can only say Seder Kedushin, the first bracha, and bracha achrita, and so you're missing on 5 brachas. I understand, and it's a shaila. Right, let's put that aside. That's not what we're talking about here. You could have a nice chasana. There are cheaper chasana halls, but the thing is, you're a gvir, so you got to show off. You don't have to show off. You know, there are plenty of things that people in the frum community, they think they have to go away for Pesach every year. They have to. It's Yarag Vel Yavor to go to a hotel for Pesach. You know, and how much that costs? You know, it costs like, I don't know, $15,000-$20,000 for that 1 week. It's really worth it. For some people, it is. I understand. Everybody has their own cheshbon. I'm not forgetting those people. But the thing is certain things that are not a need are not a need, and you don't need to spend that much money on chasana. And you know, I know people who told their kids, you get a job and you're gonna save up money for your chasana, and you're gonna pay for your own chasana, and they did it. I know someone, the chasen wears a shtreimel. They lived in Muncie, come from even though their grandparents were from, but the parents were both from. The one mechutin was a shtreimel. The chasen's father was a shtreimel. The Kala was working. She saved up her own money for the chasana, and she had a beautiful chasana, and she was very happy. So is this. These are the types of things that you know, people have to have in mind, figure out, and that's life. And then the thing was, they were living in Muncie for a while, and they realized enough for them. They moved to another place, someplace people would consider out of town, but has a nice established from community. There's a pizza shop that's maybe 20-minute drive away, kosher pizza shop. There's a mikveh that's open all day for men and all night for women, and a kosher mikveh. There's day school, there's yeshiva, there's everything you need. Kosher food is a little bit difficult, but not impossible. And you make do with what you have. And the cost of living is much lower. You can have a house for $1,000 a month. You know, I'm not saying everybody has to live like me in White Lake, New York, and because the rent is low. I understand some people want to daven with a minyan, this and that. All right. Sometimes we have minions, sometimes we don't. You know, we try our best to always have, you know, be honest. But, you know, people say, well, but Parnassa, you can travel for work. People sit in traffic in Manhattan for an hour. So I drive to Rockland County, an hour and 20 minutes, whatever. It's not that big it's not that hard, and it's cheaper than if I would live in Rockland County. You know, but the thing is like, you have options. You can send your kids to, you want to send your kids to literature school, modern Orthodox school, and you could still wear a shtreimel. All right, some of the literature schools, they don't. I know Fallsburg, they said that they didn't want, that was one thing, they didn't want shtreimelach there. I remember the Satmar Rebbe from Monroe, when I asked him, we spoke to the Askonim there in Monroe about my daughter getting to school, and they said, you know, usually the Rebbe doesn't have to approve who goes in, but since you're coming from outside the community, we would like you to go ask the Rebbe, but they said, as far as we're concerned, she's welcome to come to the school. And the Rebbe knows me, and you know, so I went into the Satmar Rebbe, and I told him, and he said, it's better that she should go to Fallsburg. It's the best is the guy in Fallsburg. And I said, Fallsburg is will nicht kan stramlich. And I said, but the meidlich guy nicht mit stramlich. I said, in Fallsburg, they don't want the Jews who wear stramlich. And he said, but in Fallsburg, in the yeshiva, in the literature school, even though I was an English teacher there, they didn't want my kids there. for many reasons. But I was good enough to teach their kids, but my kids weren't good enough. It's fine. I don't have tinus on Fullsburg. They're free to do what they want. I mean, if my kids really wanted to go there, I would. But I didn't want to send them there. It was someone else who was kind of pushing that they should go there, but they didn't want me there, and I didn't want to go there. And why should I fight for something that I didn't want and they didn't want? You know, I kind of wanted more Visionets because it's local. But they said they don't have room. Fine. But then Bloomingburg opened. I was very happy there. But they didn't have for my oldest daughter. A lot of people in Bloomingburg were sending to one of the other schools in Monroe. And my feeling is the Rebbe in Monroe's Mard Asra there. I'm not taking sides in the Machlokes. I like them both. I don't have a problem with there being two Satmar Rebbes. It's totally fine and normal to me, and I think that's how it should be. But in Monroe, he's Mard Asra. It's set up in an old-fashioned way. That the Rebbe in Monroe is Mard Asra. And my feeling personally was, if I could get my kids in there, that's my first choice. Plus, the tuition is lower. Plus, they're more established. Even people who I know who are big Hasidim of Reb Zalman Leib said, do not send your kids to Reb Zalman Leib school in Monroe. If you're in Monroe, you send your kids to a Barnes school because that school is going to be more established. And it's true. They give wonderful things. I'm very happy there. So then, I said the Askanim, whoever this one, that one said, as long as the Rebbe doesn't have a problem, they're willing to take her. He's like, okay, I don't have a problem. And that was it. And we're very happy. We're very, very happy. It's been a few years now. We couldn't be happier. So now, does that mean I'm going to get everything I need there? No. And I'm not expecting to get everything I need there. Like I've said on Twitter a million times, you can't send your kids to a karate school and have complaints why they don't teach ballet in the karate school. The same thing. You can't go to a Fleischiger restaurant and ask for cheese. They don't. In kosher, we separate meat and milk. You're not going to find cheese at a meat restaurant, and you're not going to find meat at a dairy restaurant. And the same thing. You're not going to find. You can't expect to send your kids to Satmar school, and that the boys are going to get a full English program. They're going to get a basic legal English program in accordance with the laws of the state of New York. The laws were ambiguous until now, and now the laws are clear, and they do meet the laws. But you could complain. You're upset. Why did your parents send you to this school? All right. You're over 18 now. You can go educate yourself. You can make time after work, go to the library, get your GED. You could do night school. It's not easy. I understand. But if this is something you really want to, if this is something that's real important to you, you get your GED, you go to community college and get a degree, you get your associate's degree. You can go on and get a bachelor's degree. Go do it. Nobody's stopping you. You're an adult. You could do what you want. There are people who do it, if that's what you want. But you're going to complain that now you're sending your kids to this and that school and you're not happy with that. This is your choice. Nobody's making you go send your kids to this school. People might be pressuring you to send your kids to school, but you don't have to give in to their pressure. Get over yourself. If this is something that's important to you, you have to make a decision. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm sorry. I can't have it's not right. It's not American to have the government force a religious school to teach something that goes against their religious values. And if your religious values are different than your schools, than the school that you're sending your kids to, their religious values, maybe, even if they're very similar, maybe your kids are in the wrong school. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be good for them to have exposure to different things. I mean, I know my wife grew up in a Mormon home, but her parents sent her to Baptist school. And the Baptists thought she had horns on her head because she was a Mormon. But they didn't care. They didn't want to send her to the Mormon schools. They sent her, even though they raised her Mormon, they sent her to Baptist school. Same thing, Glenn Beck on the radio, I listened to him. And, he's saying how he doesn't want to, he's Mormon. He doesn't want to send his kids to Mormon school. He wants to send to some other type of school. He wants his kids to be exposed to different ideas and different things. And he said he was thinking of sending his kids to a Jewish school because he was having a hard time getting his kids into certain Christian schools because he's Mormon. And he actually said already, he said, I know the Jews will take my kids, but the Christians won't take my kids. This is what he said, Glenn Beck on the radio. But the point is, whether it's maybe in Texas they would, I don't know. But the point, what I'm saying is that the you have to. I can understand why you would be unhappy with things the schools are giving. No school is going to be perfect. You can't be a malcontent. You have to look for what's positive, and if you're not happy with something, you have to pick. You have to pick and choose what's going to work for you. Meaning, what's more important for you? Is it more important the exact particular flavor of religious studies? Meaning, like, there's this one person claiming to be a woman who's, a mother who sends her kids to Satmar schools, and she's like, I want my kids to have a Satmar Yiddish studies and to have English studies as well. Like, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get both. You got to pick one or the other. You can't expect the English studies are going to be like a modern Orthodox school, and the religious studies are going to be like Satmar. You could try to open a school like that. I know there's one guy in Israel, and I think in Beitar Elite, a Satmar German, who has, it's called like Academia Hasidic, something like this, where the boys learn a very rigorous secular education up to Israeli standards in Israel, run by a Satmar Chassid. I mean, I don't know how much of a chassid he is, which one thing I like about Satmar is you can essentially be a Satmar without being such a chassid, because it's not a cult like Chabad or New Square, or as much as I love them, Karl and Stalin, or whatever, where it's like all the Russian chassidim are like, oh, the Rebbe, the Rebbe, the Rebbe. Whereas in Satmar, the Rebbe is more of a figurehead. He doesn't really have that much power, to be honest. They're wonderful. Reb Aaron is a big Talmid Chacham. Reb Zalman Leib he knows how to learn too. I'm not saying he doesn't know how to learn, but he is a fine person. He has very good midos. I've heard moifsim about both of them, and I believe them because I believe God is the one who does it. Not the Rebbe doesn't have any power. It's because there's a mitzvah, Dovka boy. That's how these things work. But the point, what I'm saying is, there is such a and yeah, this guy got threatened. This guy got insulted. This guy got this and that. But he did what he wanted to do. He had to have a certain amount of courage to do what he did. And you can try the same thing in Brooklyn and in this place and that place. You could try and see and do it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we live in a free society. There's a free market. Things operate with supply and demand. Supply and demand can be influenced by peer pressure. Can be influenced by a lot of factors. I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to succeed, but I'm also not guaranteeing that Satmar is going to succeed. I believe Satmar is succeeding by the grace of God, that God is blessing this community, because it's a miracle that it's so successful. But there's nothing artificial making it succeed. By all odds, all of the sociologists and what they said, these more cloistered extreme forms of ultra-Orthodox Judaism, or Orthodox Judaism in general, they thought was going to be gone by the map a long time ago, and we're still around. V'hisham delav isene. We know what we're talking about. But the government is not here to, it's not like it's this Satmar's too big to fail and we have to bail them out. No, they can fail tomorrow. And the government is under no obligation to save them. And they can succeed. because it's not for the government to decide. Now, if the government is offering certain subsidies and they're offering the same subsidies to every school, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, atheist, interdenominational, non-denominational, this, that, non-sectarian, secular, religious, this, that, Catholic, Protestant, Mormon, whatever, they're all getting, the same opportunities for subsidies, whether they take them or not. There's no way. You can't go and say, Satmar shouldn't be getting them. Or, oh, look, the Amish, they don't take the government's. Why? What, because we have beards and hats, we're not supposed to take, we have to mimic the Amish? No. Oh, but the Amish, they're not taking government subsidies. Why can't you be like the Amish? Well, we're not Amish. And I've said many times, and people are like, the fact of the matter is 100%, if tomorrow all these yeshivas decided we're sending our kids to public schools, the public schools would not know what to do with them. And how much tax money is being saved by not having these kids in public schools? Can you imagine all the programs the public schools would have to do if all it wouldn't be just the regular, it would be all these programs they'd have to do, ESL and this and that, if the parents would decide. That's saving the taxpayers a lot of money. And much more is being saved than whatever little, pittance that's received from Section 8 or food stamps or, 1 or 2 kids in a regular New York State public school is costing the taxpayer more than a family of 6, and many families are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, even more kids in a family. But a family of 6 or 7 on everything, food stamps, Section 8, Medicaid, is costing the taxpayer less than 1 or 2 kids in a public school. So don't give me, it's a drain on the economy. No, it's not only equal with the Hasidic community is getting much less. And not everyone in the Hasidic community is getting these benefits. There are wealthy people who are paying more than their fair share in taxes. Plus, all of the poor people, whatever they're paying, their rent, it's going to taxes, it's going to all these things. They're just getting back their fair share, just like everybody else is getting back their fair share, just like the people who send their kids to public school are getting their fair share. Plus, plenty of people who send their kids to public school are on Medicaid and food stamps and Section 8 and all these things. It's not just the Hasidic community. And it's not just minority communities. There are many people from all different communities. Now the economy is getting better. It's not going to be like that as much anymore. And I'm very happy. I'm very happy that pretty soon, God willing, I'm not going to be on any more of these programs. This is going to be a much, better situation for me and my family. Hopefully I'll be able to hold on to this job. Hopefully it'll be a good fit for me. Hopefully I'll be a good fit for them. Hopefully, but I have to have faith. Whatever God has in store for me, I can't complain. As much as it hurts me, as much as emotionally, I'm still hurt. I still have PTSD from losing my job as the rabbi of Young Israel of Richmond, Virginia. I loved that job. I miss that job. I miss Richmond, Virginia. I haven't been back there. Even though I had opportunities to go back there, I didn't want to go back there. But I don't know. There's a lot what to say. I've already gone on for 49 minutes and didn't realize I'm just talking and talking. But again, no one should accuse me of not wanting the schools to have more English. My issue is that it's religious freedom. I recognize that there are people who have a sincere religious belief that they should not have more English. That is a sincere religious belief, whether it's a belief that's bittul Torah, bittul Zman, or whether it's a belief that's actually Tameh. There are people who actually, as I explained in the video, I know it's a controversial issue. I know people don't like to talk about that because it doesn't sound politically correct, but it is true. It's a minority. But those people should have a religious freedom to be protected and not have the government force them to teach things that go against their will, because it's a slippery slope. Because there are certain things that I would say 90% of Orthodox Jews, except maybe the most liberal left-wing modern Orthodox, would agree. There are certain things you do not teach children. There are certain things, even if you want to talk to children about, which I can question how wise it is to teach these things to children. But if you're going to teach them to children, these things parents should be teaching, not teachers. Parents should be deciding, what aspects of sex education. Do kids need to know about sexual orientations and things like that? Like, are those things that you need to know about when you're 5 years old? I know some people think that's true, but there are plenty of people who don't think that should even be on the radar of a kid. And I personally, I don't say those people who want to be very liberal and they want to teach their kids when they're 4 years old about sex and this and that, and about different sexual orientations and that. I guess parents have the right to do that. I don't know how much they have the right. Personally, I think that's actually abusive to give kids too much information when they're young. Maybe certain aspects are age appropriate, and certain aspects are certainly not age appropriate. It could border on abuse. And these are things that are being taught in public schools that are, again, and the ages are growing lower and lower when they're introducing ideas at a younger and younger age. And in England right now, that's a fight. And many of the progressive left-wingers in New York would love to see all the religious schools be forced to teach gay studies and this and that. This is not hatred against people who identify themselves based on their sexual orientation. I personally take more of a biblical mindset that sexual activity is an action and not a state of being. And I really want to make a video about that, but I'm frightened that YouTube will take my channel down if I explain how I understand the biblical texts in a way that totally is different than how Western society views it. That it's not in any way, from a biblical standpoint, an identity issue. It's not that there's a type of person. But again, I understand this is how Western society today defines these roles. That someone is, it's not that someone performs, homosexual or heterosexual actions, but that someone, quote unquote, is a homosexual or is a heterosexual. I don't believe that that's a state of being. That I believe that's a state of doing. And I can show that from a biblical standpoint. And the question whether or not it's sin, it's clear what the Bible says, that what's sin and what's not sin. You could say you don't believe the Bible's true, you're not a religious person. That's your right. I don't argue anybody has the right not to believe that. From a secular government standpoint, I'm not saying the government should say you have to believe in the Bible, or you have to accept everything the way I accept it. You have to accept that the Bible is literally the Word of God, which is something I believe. But also the fact is, and I'm not even saying you have to accept my interpretation. You want to interpret that that's how the Bible is read? I personally think that the Bible is not talking about, quote unquote, what we think of gay people. There is no such concept in the Bible. Even in what the books that Christians call the New Testament, the passages that could be interpreted like that. In the Old Testament, there's, which to me is the only Testament. I'm Jewish, I'm not a Christian. But what Christians call the Old Testament, in my Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, there's not that many references to homosexuality, but they're always talking about a state of doing and not a state of being. In the Christian New Testament, there's one passage for sure that could be interpreted as a state of being, but even the state of being is not in the sense that we understand it today. that this is a type of person you are, that you have a label now, that the identity politics that really has been invented to divide and conquer people. It's really a whole socialist ideology. At least that's how I understand it. And it doesn't mean that we should hate people who identify with this, who struggle with this, And that doesn't mean that someone who believes that it's sinful hates people who identify with this, who either, some people struggle with it, some people are fine with it, and some people this, some people that. It's not a matter of hatred. It's a matter, but to say that a 5-year-old kid doesn't even have to know about this, and there's no reason even for a 10-year-old kid to know about this stuff, even in today's society, quote unquote, that a child can be sheltered from these things. I think most Orthodox Jews would say, yeah, there's certain things that kids are not ready to hear, and there's certain things that if they are ready to hear, they should hear from their parents. They shouldn't hear it out on the street, although that's where they might be likely to hear it because their parents are scared to teach them on the, the parents are too nervous to teach them about it, and they're, the kids are going to look on the internet or whatever it is, and they're going to find things, and all right, it's difficult. I know it's not easy, but is it the school's job to do it? Well, it should be up to the parents to know what the schools are teaching, to get an idea. Maybe the parents would want the schools to teach it. I mean, I know, schools that are discussing, other issues. I read something recently from Near Israel in Baltimore, how they want to, teach the boys about sexuality and things like that. And one thing that they said is, in Mishnah and Chagiga that says, Ein darshan b'rayos b'shlosha, you don't teach laws of sexuality publicly. You can't have 3 or more people, even 3 are too many, to teach about sexuality because it's so easy to get confused and to try to find some answer to this and that. And so the Talmud says, these are things that have to be taught privately. Groups of 2, or maybe a teacher with up to 2 students, or one-on-one, to be taught about certain basic things and not teach them everything. Have them understand there's certain things you're going to learn later, and there's certain things you should know now. And each school has its idea exactly how they approach these questions, how to discuss them. Some don't want to teach them at all, and that's their right as well. And the thing is, when you get the government involved, it's going to be a slippery slope. Before you know it, if you get the government involved, and you think it's just going to be about math and reading, it's not even going to be about science and history, because you don't really need to know science and history to make a living. You just need to know math and reading, right? That's what I hear some people say. People who are claiming they're advocating for education in the Haredi schools. We just need math and reading, spelling, reading, proper English, math. That's all that's important. Science and history, not that important. And then the government's saying, no, why? What do you mean science and history are not important? We got to teach science. All right, so now we're going to teach science and history. Oh, you're going to teach science. That means you're going to have to teach evolution. All right. You're going to teach history. You're going to have to teach about different religions. Now, some yeshivas are fine with that. Some are not. Okay. You're going to have to teach about the sexual revolution. You're going to have to teach, look at this history of gay rights and this and that. You're going to have to teach all these things in yeshiva now. Oh. And not only are you going to have to teach in the yeshiva, but we got to be fair to everybody. The Christian schools have to teach it. The Muslim schools have to teach it. So now the Christians and Muslims are like, you Jews messed up for us. And you're going to be right. They're going to be 100% right. And those things I don't think are appropriate to be taught in yeshivas. If some yeshivas decide that that's their standard, they're free to do that. But I think most of those yeshivas that do teach it, I think most of them would agree. Yeah, a yeshiva should be able to decide what our standard is. Are we going to teach this or we can teach that? Just like the yeshivas have the right to teach different things about Israel and this and that. Even though I know I don't know any Satmars who say, oh yeah, those modern Orthodox schools, we should report them. They should not be allowed to be teaching, to sing Hatikva and this and that. No, they were just like, this is not for us. and we protest against it, but we're not asking the New York, Albany to go and crack down on the what do you call it, the modern Orthodox schools for teaching about Zionism, because obviously the parents, they want his kids to get a Zionist education. They're going to send their kids to Zionist school, and that's their right. I don't have a problem with that. It's not what I'm going to teach my kids necessarily, but you can teach. But I've heard plenty of Zionist people say, "Oh, Satmar should be labeled a terrorist group because they hate Israel." What are you talking about? First of all, they don't hate Israel. They oppose Zionism. They don't hate the people. They oppose the ideology of a Jewish state, which, it still boggles my mind. Why is it that people who are otherwise liberal and progressive hold on to this anachronistic idea of nationalism vis-a-vis Zionism in Israel? It just totally confuses me. It doesn't really make any sense to me. I really don't understand it. Is this, and in general, Zionism, it just really bugs me. I don't understand why so many people who are otherwise globalists are Zionists. It just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of people are shocked by this. A lot of people are upset by this. Meaning, I don't understand why, why people are supportive of open borders in Europe and America and not in Israel. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not supportive of open borders in any country because that undermines the sovereignty of that country. Then what's a country about if it has open borders? You can be welcoming. You should be welcoming, but you got to know who's coming in, and I don't care what country it is. If anything, Israel, which, prides itself on welcoming refugees and this and that, and that's their whole raison d'être. They should be welcoming refugees, and they do, but then they're like, oh, this is a little too much. And the fact of the matter is, though, to be honest, to those people who are going to ask this question, the fact of the matter is, for the most part, the right-wing people in Israel oppose the open borders. The left-wing people in Israel support open borders. The right-wing people who oppose open borders in Israel probably also oppose open borders in America and in Europe. The left-wing people who support open borders in America and Europe support open borders in Israel and really want to undermine Israel too. They probably want to undermine Israel much more than any Haredim in the most extreme Torah Karta. I don't think want to undermine Israel as much as someone like Rabin, or he's not around anymore, but like how he was, and Ehud Barak and these people and Sarid and whatever their names are. Don't need to mention their names. Netanyahu is not, as much as people want to make the conspiracy theories and this and that, and I'm not a Zionist, but Netanyahu is not supportive of open borders in America. Netanyahu is totally best buds with Donald Trump. It's a fact, and there's nothing conspiratorial about it. There's nothing weird about it. Netanyahu is a pretty right-wing guy as far as Israel goes. And the fact that he's been elected so many times shows that there is a big right-wing push in Israel as well. And they're not, just like they're not for open borders in Israel, they're not for open borders in Europe or America. They're not trying to, there's no nefarious agenda the way people think, the way that so many of the people of the, and the same people, the fact is that the same people who who are problematic in America are problematic in Israel and all these countries. Even though my idea for Israel is more what they call the one-state solution. It's none of my business. I'm an American. It's like what Rabbi Soloveitchik used to say. Americans have no business dictating Israeli policy, and I agree with that. Not because I'm a big chassid of Rav Soloveitchik, but I don't hate him either. Many of my rebbeim were students of his, so I have to have a certain amount of hakaras hatov to him, and they were really good students of his. You know, it was Moshe Weinberger, Moshe Lazarus, Barbara Braunspiegel. Many of my rebbeim were students of Rav Soloveitchik. I'm just rambling on. If anybody's still watching at this point, I'm very impressed. But he said very wisely, he said the American has no business in Israeli politics, but I can still state my opinion. And when I hear someone like Caroline Glick say, yeah, Israel should just annex all the land that they won in 1967, I'm pretty fine with that. On the other hand, I remember, what's that guy's name that got killed from Libya? He wrote in the New York Times about this. Colonel Gaddafi, right? Muammar Gaddafi. He wrote in the New York Times they should make a binational state, Israelstein, whatever is what he said. And my idea is really take the American model. Take the American model of federalism, make it one country, bound by a constitution, with several states that have a certain level of autonomy united under a federal government. I think that would be a wonderful idea for Israel. Meaning that because first of all, that would end the whole issue of Gaza and the West Bank, quote unquote, Yesha, Yehuda, Shomron, Aza, that they're non-contiguous, and how can you give the Palestinians a state that's non-contiguous? I don't think the Palestinians should have a state. They haven't proved themselves to be worthy of having a state. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me why Israel has a wonderful population of Israeli Arabs who are loyal Israeli citizens, many of them, if not most of them. And why can't, if you're making a new country, Palestine, why can't you have Jewish citizens? Why do you have to uproot the people living in Gaza, make them leave their homes and their businesses and their synagogues and everything? And in Gush Katif and this, and the answer was not that the Palestinians were kicking them out. The Israelis were kicking them out, because if there were Israelis who became Palestinian citizens, that would undermine the whole idea of Israel. That's first of all. But second of all, which I would be kind of happy with, it would show that Israel is not necessary. But second of all, yes, the leadership of the Palestinians are extremely corrupt, but so is the Israeli leadership. But not the only thing is, Israel is not like only like the lesser of two evils. It's like the least of like 15 evils in the region, but it's still evil, But the answer, I think, because this Abbas guy, all these people, these are not leaders. These are thugs. These are murderers. These are people who steal from their own people, from their own citizens. Israel goes and gives them all kinds of money, and this and that, and gives them everything for free, and then the Palestinians just take it all from them to make them quote unquote refugees. Israel gives them all this stuff for free, and the Palestinian leaders make them into refugees just to make Israel look bad after Israel gives them everything. It's ridiculous. What has to be is, I think Israel, they won that land in 1967 war. They don't want to annex it because they don't want to lose their Jewish, population. They don't want to lose their Jewish majority because they care more about having a Jewish state than having peace. But if they annex the country, have each, but not make it one state, You can have like 5 different states under one constitution. The United States of the Holy Land, And you could have different Arab states, different even among the Jews, have Chiloni, Dati, Haredi, different states. Have 3 different Jewish states, 2 different Arab states, and all united under one constitution that guarantees religious freedom. I mean, I would love to see the Rabbanut be privatized and not have being Jewish be an issue on a national level. That's the weirdest and stupidest and most moronic thing I can think of. But of course, I understand it's necessary if you're going to call yourself a Jewish state, but I don't believe it should be a Jewish state. I don't believe in Jewish nationalism and all these things. I mean, I'm fine with Israel having essentially being a state of Jews, having an essentially Jewish culture that even has some religious aspects to it on the government level, just like America. In America, post office is closed on Sunday and on Christmas and, Easter Sunday anyway. So, it's the same thing. Yeah. The national holidays can be religious holidays in Israel. Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. And Saturday can be the day the post office are closed, just like they have it now. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with chaplaincy in jails and prisons and in military, like we have in America. But this idea of an official religion, that kind of bothers me. The chief rabbinate, that kind of bothers me. Not that the institution has to go away. The institution existed pre-state. They don't need the state to keep it around. But the fact that it's a state, an official state program. However, if you had individual states, and you had the Dati Le'umi state, within these United States, there's one state, whatever you want to call it, Medinat Yehuda, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I know Meir Kahana, Zichron Levracha, wanted to, but he had a different idea. He meant that Yehuda, that the West Bank should be Medinat Yehuda. I think he even started making currency and all kinds of stuff, He also didn't mean it to divide, but personally, on a political level, I think that would be a wonderful idea for Israel. Would be to have a united states under a constitution with several states with independence, certain of a not autonomy but not independence, meaning they're dependent but semi-autonomous type of deal. I think that would be rather wise, personally. I don't know. Maybe people disagree with me. I don't know. I mean, today is Yom Ha'atzmaut, which I find it quite silly how it became a movable feast. That if they're celebrating an event that happened on the 5th of Iyar, but we're celebrating on the 4th of Iyar, and they're saying Hallel on the 4th of Iyar, and I don't get it. I mean, I understand why they're doing it. They're concerned about Chilul Shabbos. It's very noble. The fact that they're concerned about Chilul Shabbos shows that there's something wrong with Israel as a quote-unquote Jewish state. No? Yeah, think about that, I mean, I don't know. In America, we're not worried when Christmas falls on a Sunday. And not only that, but I will take it to the next step. Yeah, Christmas falls on a Sunday, so we'll have Monday off from work. I understand that. So we can have Thursday off from work. for Yom Ha'atzmaut, but should we be saying Hallel? Like, just because, in America, if Christmas falls on Sunday, we're going to get Monday off. Doesn't mean we're going to have midnight mass in the church on Monday. That's kind of weird. I understand. All right. I'm sorry, but it's weird. There's the church is still going to celebrate Christmas on Sunday. It's just that the government offices are going to be closed Monday because they're closed anyway Sunday. Yeah. It's weird. I'm sorry. I think it's weird. So, but I don't celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut. So I'm, obviously, but all right, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to think about. But again, this is what I'm really coming down to. Back to America. Here in America, we have religious freedom. Here we don't have the Rabbanut. Here we don't have all this nonsense that they have in the European countries. I remember I had an interview to be chief rabbi of Munich, Germany, and they described to me how the Jewish community pays a tax to the German government, that the German government then pays to the synagogues. Muslims pay a Muslim tax that goes to the mosques, and the Lutherans pay the Lutheran tax that goes to the Lutheran church. And I was like, that's just weird. And that's the old European way, but that's not the American way. I'm sorry. If you want that style, move to Israel, move to Germany, move to Chvez, wherever you want to move to Cuba. I don't care. Here in America, we have freedom. You have freedom to succeed and fail. I mean, that's why they have that in Europe, because the churches would close down if they weren't subsidized. Because people don't care. People are not religious. Government has replaced God. I heard it on the radio today that the places where there's more government, there's less of religion. Where the government is more powerful, people are less religious. That's basically Stalin, right? All right. Well, so that's really what I want to bring out. I'm not against yeshivas teaching more English. There are plenty of yeshivas that teach English. If all the yeshivas decide we want to teach English, beautiful. But if just one decides, we want to do the old-fashioned way, and they have enough people that they could support themselves and keep it alive, more power to them. It's a free country. They can do whatever the hell they want. As long as they're not committing any crimes, and this is not a crime, this is not abuse. When you turn everything into abuse, and everything's a crime, then nothing's abuse and nothing's a crime. You can't go and say that, giving a different type of education is abusive or neglective. It isn't. It's like you hear these people, so-and-so, he's a Nazi, he's Hitler, he's this, he's that. And, I talk like that sometimes just to show people how stupid they are for talking like that, and people don't understand what I'm saying, but, the thing is when everybody's a Nazi, when everybody's Hitler, then it means, you don't understand who Hitler was, you don't understand what a Nazi is, you just throw around these words, not understanding what they mean. All right, so the same thing, I throw around commie all the time, this, that. But the fact of the matter is, all right, there's a difference between communism and socialism, I know. But a lot of these things are a slippery slope. You get started. Excuse me. You get started with one thing, you're going to lead to something else. And no, Donald Trump is not a Nazi. He's the furthest thing from a Nazi. If you study history, if you compare the roots of the Nazi Party and everything, the Democrat Party has much more in common with the Nazi Party. In fact, the Nazi Party got much of their ideology from the Democratic Party. In fact, they said, when they were trying to figure out how to make a race-based state, they learned the history of the Democratic Party, and they said, these guys are too racist for us. People don't know that, but that's part of history. And people just ignore, no, The Democrats are the party of unity and this. No, they're not. They're the party of disunity. They are the most racist. Everything the Democratic Party has to do has to be through this lens of race. Why? Because it's about divide and conquer. It's not about the value of the individual. It's not about, freedom. It's about, we can pigeonhole you into this group, so now you're a block vote, and we can get what we want from you, and I've spoken about, the issues of block voting in the Hasidic community. But the thing is, the Hasidic community is very smart about how they deal with block voting. They've turned it into an art, but not everybody follows it. There are dissenters, and it's a secret ballot. It's a free country. So, what is this? Where did I get this from? Oh, okay. So, anyway, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Should I go to Minyan now? I don't want to go to shul where they're not going to take tachna and because it's Yom Ha'atzmaut. I don't know. Is that a good enough excuse not to go down with the Minyan, especially it's more than Kedei L'chmil? Probably. So I should probably just daven Mincha now. It's 7 o'clock, or I don't think I'm even going to make it in time for Mincha. I feel bad because, I have my uncle's yard site, a great uncle. He's the yard site. Maybe tomorrow we'll have Mincha in shul. I doubt it. But I asked my uncle to say Kaddish for me, saying Kaddish anyway for my Baba. So I talked about a lot of things. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and all the best. Sorry this went on so long. All right. Take care.